Hello and welcome to this special edition of The Conservative Five, a production of LibertyNation.com. I'm Lisa K. Donner, Editor-in-Chief, and joining me tonight are Sarah Cowgill, Graham Noble, Tim Donner, and Joe Schaefer, for what we all hope will be a rockin' after party about the final presidential debate and all things election 2020. Thanks to you, our viewers, for joining us. Now let's start with this special edition of The Conservative Five. So the debates are finally over. Phew. I think it would be safe to say there were contentious moments, but this last one was designed to be a little bit more restrained. With a mute button in place, how did the candidates fare? Did they give a good accounting of themselves? Were they able to outline their policies? Did those watching get an idea of what America will look like under the leadership of Joe Biden? And was President Trump able to make the case that he should get 4 more years?
All he talks about is shutdowns. No.
Let's begin with you, Joe, since you have written extensively and beautifully about each and every debate. Give us a few of your thoughts.
Well, I thought it was no surprise. I think that this cake's been baked. That's, the theme has been set for this election. Biden is running as the anti-Trump, so I expected him to go after Trump a little more harsher tonight, even than he has before, and he did that. I was a little surprised by Trump. I don't think it was a major error on his part, but I thought he should have been more persistent in nailing Biden down on this Hunter Biden laptop thing. I think he could have cornered him more than he did. I know he tried to bring it up, but I would have just kept on bringing up the big guy thing if I was him. I would have made him answer that question. Welker, the moderator, jumped in at one point and changed the subject to his taxes, and he just went along and started defending his taxes. I would have said, no, Joe, answer this question. He made an excellent point. He was like, Joe, you took money from Russia. I didn't. You took money from Ukraine. I didn't. You took money from China. I didn't. And then he could have really said, what about these laptops? What's going on? The American people deserve an answer. And then he just should have kept at it. And I think Biden wanted to answer even at some point. And he didn't make him directly answer that big guy thing. And I think he could have. So on that point, I just thought Trump could have gone a little more harder to the mat than he did, actually, which is surprising to say when you talk about Donald Trump.
Sarah.
Oh, I thought both candidates came off well. Trump was presidential, and I thought that was an amazing feat for the man. And I also thought that Mr. Biden held his own. He didn't stammer or stutter too much. He answered questions. He pivoted and threw it back in Trump's face pretty frequently. And the moderator, although I thought she did very well, as opposed to the last fiasco, I don't think she followed through. I think she cut Trump off a few places here and there. But overall, I think there was a little more presidentialness about this debate. And I think both of them got a bit of a message out, whereas last time there was no message.
Tim.
Well, I think the difference between this debate and the first debate was that this one was essentially properly moderated. Joe's right that that Kristen Welker, who did a much, much better job than Chris Wallace 2 weeks ago, who seemed to be concerned mostly about himself, she generally ran a constructive debate. She generally allowed, enough flexibility in the rules so that both candidates gave a representative account of themselves, whether that was for better or for worse. I disagree that Biden that Biden came off well. He was representative, but I don't think he came off well because as the evening progressed, he looked older, more tired. He stumbled more. He seemed more confused. And some of that could have been because of stuttering, but most of it, I think, was just that we all know that he has trouble handling 90 straight minutes in that kind of format. I mean, he struggled through and staggered to the finish line, and he didn't embarrass himself, to be sure. But Trump, to me, looked strong. He looked presidential. He looked dynamic. He looked like he was in charge. He fended off criticism, I think pretty effectively without getting hot-headed or bombastic. So, I don't know who won the debate. These things are very difficult to figure out. Both sides think they win in the spin room that happens afterwards. But I think Donald Trump has to be very happy with the way things turned out tonight.
Well, he certainly was in control. I was so glad he had a pencil and a paper and, took his energies out by taking notes instead of interrupting.
He didn't basically make the case for how good the next 4 years are going to be under Trump, other than to point to his some of his achievements, I guess, as if implying, well, if I get a second term, then we're going to get back on that track of those achievements and that great economy and all the rest of it. But the biggest thing to me was the way Biden came over, which was kind of angry, bitter, almost the whole time on the verge of completely losing his temper.
I just want to take a second to disagree with you a little bit there, Joe. In your opening statement, you said that, you thought Trump should have really hung on to the Hunter Biden email thing and they never got an answer. I think he did get an answer. I think he got an answer several times. Joe Biden just denied. I think he said, no, I never did that. I never took a penny. I never took a dime. And, what are you going to do with something like that? If somebody's going to, I don't know, I don't want to say lie, but whatever, that was his, answer. And he got it over several times.
I think that Trump introduced the subject to a point where it seems to me that some of the elite media at least have to pursue this. I mean, whether he went too far or not far enough, whether his presentation was right or not, the most important thing was that he brought it up and that he pursued it fairly aggressively, but in a controlled manner. He didn't blow his stack or lose his cool. He calmly laid out the basics of what people need to know about the Biden family profiting off of foreign actors directly.
Yeah.
Official corruption. People need to know about official corruption, which is what we're talking about. It's very different than anything Donald Trump might have done in the real estate industry.
Right.
This is the type of official corruption that helped to sink Hillary Clinton 4 years ago.
All right, we only have just a few minutes in the segment and I cut you off, Joe, so go ahead.
Well, I just thought there was a moment there where Trump was excellent. He said, I didn't take money from Russia, you did. I didn't take money from Ukraine, you did. I didn't take money from China, you did. And, and he could have really put on and Joe say something, respond. And Welker jumped in and said, let's talk about your taxes now. And then Trump just went and defended himself on his taxes, which I don't think he should have done. I think he should have kept, he said, Joe, answer me what happened on Hunter's laptop, what happened with Burisma, what happened with China, specific answers. And even if he didn't give specific answers, I just think he could have put Biden more on the spot than he did. I don't think it was a big loss for him, but I thought it was an opportunity that he could have taken more advantage.
Now, the best line was the vacuum cleaner. Your family's busy vacuuming up all the money in China and
Your
Russia.
family's like a vacuum cleaner, Joe, like a vacuum cleaner.
But that's all great, and Trump's wonderful at that, but I wanted Biden to have to respond. And maybe you're right, Lisa, he just wasn't going to give a response. But I wanted to keep saying he should have kept calling him big guy 3 or 4 times and just kind of baited out a response. And if he didn't really give a response, I think that would have told more. He didn't really give a response, but was it enough that it looked like he was evading the question? Or like you said, did he really answer the question? I don't think he did. I don't
Sarah?
think he officially answered.
Oh, come on, Joe. That's
How many come on,
man.
Oh, geez.
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Here's the thing. Let's just talk Joe Biden. In 47 years as a politician, he knows how to deflect. He knows how to take a question and completely answer another question. He had no no reason to answer that question. So he just, deflected. He managed to go, hey, well, what about this? Or, hey, what about that? He didn't answer the question. He's never going to answer the question. It's politics 101.
One of the things that Trump kept going back to, which I think is effective, and he believes it's effective, and it's similar to what he did with Hillary Clinton, is that he said, you've been in government for 47 years. You talk about all these grand plans, all these schemes you're going to implement when you become president. But you had 47 years to do this. You had 8 years as vice president of Barack Obama. You didn't get any of this done. Now you say, oh, you're going to get all of this great stuff done. Typical politician. That's what Trump said.
We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. I'm going to hold you up.
Okay.
Just before we close this segment, Graham, I think Joe did bring up an interesting point. The person that really got hot under the collar tonight wasn't Donald Trump. It was Joe Biden. There's a little bit of mean Joe something going on there during one segment. It almost didn't seem quite appropriate of the moment. What did you think?
No, I really do not believe that Mr. Biden acquitted himself well in the whole debate. I thought, and there were several segments throughout the debate during the immigration when they were talking about the kids being separated from their parents or from the adults who brought them over the border anyway. I think Trump got the best of Joe Biden on that one with the whole thing about who built the cages. And even then, Joe's almost yelling into the camera about the kids and getting very worked up. And I think he did that throughout the debate. I thought he seemed very unsettled. He didn't seem at ease to me at all. And I thought his entire demeanor for the entire debate was not what you would expect of someone who wants to become president, and not what you'd expect of someone who spent all those years in the Senate and then in the 8 years in the White House as vice president. He should have handled himself better. And I really felt he was just completely not at ease and on his heels and ruffled the whole time.
Well, I do believe everyone has had a chance to weigh in this first segment. Let's move on. The unfortunate thing about adding structure to a debate is that it can kind of make for boring television. It'll be interesting to see the ratings for this final debate, I think, as well as the drop-off rate. In other words, how many people turned the channel after so many minutes? What this means is that both men needed to do well right out of the gate. Who won the first 30 minutes? Sarah?
Oh, Trump, absolutely. But it was a close race. I can honestly say that after we got into 30 minutes, 45 minutes, but Biden started to slow down like it's past his bedtime. I think Trump absolutely won the first 30 minutes, but it was close. They were both contained. They were both answering questions. Nobody was stuttering or stammering or accusing as much as they were getting along. It was decorum that was missing in the first debate that might have kept people watching. I don't know if that equates to a ratings increase because, again, I don't think anybody's undecided. So I'm not sure that a whole bunch of people tuned into this one.
All right, Tim.
Well, I think that the debate starting off with the COVID, with the pandemic as the first issue, it was remarkably civilized because they disagreed on things, but they didn't call each other names. They didn't make a lot of accusations beyond what Biden sort of has to do because he can't say as a candidate, oh, well, I think Trump did a fine job. He can't do that. Can't afford to do that. So he's got to try to distinguish himself. Then Trump came back and said, well, everything you just said, Joe, is stuff that my administration has already done. But it was good. The first part I thought was more good than it was a winner for one or the other. Just like I said earlier, the sense that both gave very representative sample of themselves. Trump saying we've got to keep the country open at almost any expense. We cannot have another shutdown. And we need to be brave in the face of a still ongoing pandemic. Whereas, Joe Biden represented his position very well, too, which is we've got to all wear masks. We've got to be more fearful. We have to do regional, at least, shutdowns.
We have to dark winter ahead.
Listen to the scientists. So, look, they both believe in their positions, I presume. And I think that they both articulated them well.
Yeah. Anybody else get the creeps about the long, dark winter ahead? Just me?
I thought it was a major mistake I thought it was a gaffe even for Biden to say, I want to encourage everyone to wear masks all the time.
That's what he's always said.
Oh, but it did not, maybe it's what Graham was saying, his tone was bitter and harsh. It did not go over well when he said that. And I thought that was surprising. I thought the coronavirus, I wrote about this in my debate preview, it's all been said, it's been hashed out. The American people didn't want to hear these two guys say the same things they've been saying for months now on this topic. It was almost a way to protect Joe Biden. He just had to say the same things that he said, like you said. And I thought he screwed up on the mask thing because it came off as way too harsh, way out of line with what millions of Americans want. They're so fatigued with this at this time. Again, feel free to disagree with me. I thought it was a mistake on his part when he should have just given a more pat answer to, I thought, an easy question.
I agree. That long, dark winter thing was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, Twitter blew up, like Facebook feed blew up. People are like, we can't do this any longer. We don't want to do this any longer. We need positivity. And I think that was one of his biggest gaffes of the night.
Graham, if you're going to get to say anything, you're going to have to interrupt, bro.
Totally agree. I totally agree with that. I think he almost said, hey, I'm Joe Biden, vote for me, and I'm going to make your lives miserable. I mean, what was he thinking? What was he thinking going there? He should never have said any of that. And, Trump has always approached this in the right way. As far as I'm concerned, he's always said, look, we can't just stop. We've got to carry on living. We've got to, get back to our lives. We can't allow this virus to crush us. And Joe Biden was really saying, well, no, actually, we should allow this virus to crush us. We need to hide and we need to be terrified until we can get rid of it. And that's not an answer that, Americans want to hear.
I have to say,
I'm sort of... Reaper is around the corner. Nobody wants to hear that. Sorry, Lisa.
No, say that again. I'm sorry.
Nobody wants to hear the Grim Reapers hanging around outside, in your driveway by the mailbox.
Which he said with that empty chair line that he loves to trot out. Like every American family has that empty chair where Trump killed somebody.
That was about the cheapest emotional appeal I've heard, even for a guy who's been in politics for 50 years.
But I think Trump called him on it. That was interesting. He said, a politician with the family sitting around the table. He said, and they even said, you could do better than that, Joe.
Yeah. Come on, Joe, you're better than that. But, I wrote a piece on LibertyNation.com a couple of weeks ago called Joe Biden and the Masking of America. And I think it's the mask is not only the most useful accessory for Democrats, it's also the perfect symbol of their campaign. We've all got to wear the mask. We've all got to be fearful. And by the way, we're going to mask our true policies. We're going to mask the socialist policies that we really want to enforce. Don't listen to Joe Biden or listen to him now. He's a nice front man. But he's going to serve as the mask for the true essence of the Democratic Party, which we saw during the Democratic primary. So the mask is the ideal, perfect symbol of the Democratic Party and Joe Biden circa 2020.
That was fabulous imagery, just saying.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, I was just thinking about his personality, Joe Biden's personality. He's got this facade of this nice, friendly, pop grandpa, having ice cream and calling his grandkids all the time. And then the underbelly of all that, you see what's going on with the Hunter Biden emails and the things he says about his father in the emails. And then he suddenly makes a hard right turn and has a mean streak that I sort of find frightening. I mean, everyone says Donald Trump is a wild card, but I find Joe Biden's facade
This
that
is
hides that mean streak. Very frightening.
this is the corner that he's boxed himself in by not running on an agenda of his own. He's been in politics for 47 years and he's running on "I'm not Donald Trump." Well, then all you can do is attack Donald Trump. I mean, that's all you've got. You're the anti-Trump. So the gloom and doom, the dystopian vision, much like his acceptance speech at the Democratic National Convention, which was apocalyptic in its nature. I mean, so that's what he was doing with the coronavirus. He later when he called Trump Abe Lincoln and said, this guy is the most racist, president ever. That was just, I mean, that came across as so sarcastic and just, acerbic. I didn't think there was anything witty or clever about it. He has to paint this vision of just America is crumbling under Donald Trump because he has not offered a vision of his own. And like I said, I don't see how that's going to get people who may not like Trump to go out and vote for Joe Biden. Say, okay, I don't like Trump, but am I really going to make an effort to vote for this guy? I don't know why anybody would unless they really, really dislike Trump.
I'll tell you what won't get people to vote for Joe Biden is probably the closest thing he made to news near the end of the debate when he said, yes, we're going to transition from the oil industry. Now, that's a pretty aggressive term. And immediately Trump picked up on it and said, I hope you hear that, Texas and Pennsylvania and Ohio. It's hard to believe that Joe Biden would use that kind of language right before an election where the key swing states or the bulk of the key swing states are all energy producing states with fossil fuels, the very kind that he's going to transition out of. So I think that's going to be a headline coming out of this. What does this mean for the energy industry now that he said explicitly that we're going to transition away from it if he becomes president?
All right. Any final thoughts before we move on?
I will make one point, and it's got really nothing to do with what the rest of you have just been talking about, but we began this particular segment talking about the structure of this debate, and I thought it was done pretty well. And Lisa, you speculated whether or not there would be a drop-off, what the ratings would be like, what the drop-off. My personal prediction is this, that I believe the ratings will be phenomenal for this debate. And I don't believe there'll be a lot of drop off because you know why? Because everyone who's sitting at home watching this debate was thinking, okay, this is very structured and very orderly. Well, at what point is Trump or maybe even Biden going to totally throw the rule book of this debate out the window and go rogue and just like blow the whole thing up? And I think a lot of people would have been glued to their televisions for the entire debate, waiting for that to happen.
Well, that's a really good point. And, I think everyone was kind of holding their breath, but I'm sort of with Joe. I thought if I make it through one more 15-minute segment about COVID and masks and the number of people that died and xenophobia and yada, yada, yada.
And climate change.
But one thing she did well, I thought she did really well, is she snuck in a question about North Korea, which was, there was no foreign policy on that. Anyway, let's look to the future. Okay, we have a little less than 2 weeks before Election Day. And we know that, 63 million people have already voted? Is that right?
Not quite that many.
I think it was
47 million or something, I believe.
47, okay. We've already had an October surprise with the alleged Biden family email shakedown, and it's getting close to where we can stop saying that word alleged, because with that guy coming out tonight, Bidens are starting to get pretty heavily boxed in. Anyway, my question is, who comes out of this debate ahead, and has that historically made a difference? So, for questions on the historical political memory bank, nobody is better than Tim. So I'd like you to start, Mr. Donner. Can you give us a rundown of those who came out of the final debate ahead and if it really matters in the end?
Well, that's a heavy mantle to carry, to say the least, and I reject it, just for the record. I think the most famous debate that really changed things was actually in 1980, when Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter went down the home stretch essentially tied in most of the polls. Reagan might have been slightly ahead in some, Carter in others, but their debate was a matter of about 5 days before the election. It was the only debate they had. And that's when Ronald Reagan not only said, "There you go again," but he also pulled the line, which has been asked of voters ever since 1980, which is, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And that question, I think, really caused people to focus and ponder the simple better or worse than when Carter took office. And that race just absolutely broke loose in the final days, and Reagan won 44 out of 50 states against a sitting president. Now, of course, in 1960, it was the famous thing, Kennedy and Nixon, the first televised debate ever. And what everybody remembers is that those listening on the radio thought Nixon won, and those who were watching on TV thought Kennedy won because Nixon sweat on his upper lip. It was the what do they call it? The lip sweat that cost an election, when it was actually the state of Illinois that was stolen from Nixon, but that's a whole different story. But in terms of debates, I'm not sure that the 2012 debates changed much of anything. I'm not sure 2016 changed much of anything. 2008 certainly didn't, or 2004. 2000 might have, because Al Gore came off as being so inaccessible, shall we say, to the average person, having grown up in a hotel room in Washington, D.C. So I'm not sure that the Bush-Gore debates in 2000 made much of a difference, but if they did, they probably tipped it a bit towards Bush. But I'd say 1960, 1980, the most notable in terms of debates making a difference.
Anybody else?
I think possibly at this stage, it may be a little too late for this debate to have made a huge amount of difference. I don't know, going back to the observations that Joe was making earlier on about, if there are any people out there who are still on the fence about who they're going to vote for, would this debate have made any difference to them? And I tend to think that probably, if anything, and kind of following on from what Joe said, if people just don't like Trump anyway, and they were determined that they weren't going to vote for him, are they likely, because of this debate performance, are they likely to now turn around and say, well, yeah, I think I would vote for Joe Biden? I can't see it. I don't think he came off very well at all. He didn't come off as likable. He didn't come off as rational. He came off as just angry. And I can't imagine that this debate swayed anyone. I don't really think it probably swayed anyone towards Trump, but I certainly don't think it would have swayed anyone towards Joe Biden.
Now, Sarah, you were making an interesting point earlier. You said, well, I don't think there's anybody out there to sway.
I don't think there are. I tend to have a thumb on the pulse of a lot of people across this country, just in random places, as well as, all of us at Liberty Nation. And I don't see it. I've asked the question every week. Is anybody undecided? Is there anything that could change? Is there something that might change your mind about voting for Trump or about voting for Joe Biden? And I have gotten the same answer from every contact I have across the country. And it's been nope, 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 nope. Everybody is in this up to their eyebrows. They're not changing their minds.
For those of you out there that don't know, I just want to put a 2 cents in here. Sarah is the glue at Liberty Nation, and we love her. Go ahead, Tim.
I have a different viewpoint. And it's just based on circumstances and human nature and human behavior. We all here, and everybody in journalism, writers like us, we have kind of tunnel vision. We live this stuff every day. We see it every day. And we talk about the swamp and how contained that is. But we lived in something of a contained world as well, because we follow this stuff so closely. But there's millions and millions of people out there, especially in a year with a pandemic, where they're worried about their jobs and their health and their future, and people are full of fear and they're isolated. And then you see the riots with George Floyd and after the George Floyd killing, and suddenly all of urban America is burning up. They don't have time in the midst of all of that to think deeply about a political race that's months away.
No, you're wrong. They're all sitting at their kitchen table trying to figure out how to get Johnny to the doctor because they don't have health care.
But my point is that these people they don't live for politics. They don't care about politics. They don't like politics. And they certainly don't follow it closely, especially in a ghastly year like 2020, where there's so many other things they have to think of that are life and death issues for them. So those people who aren't paying that much attention, who are like Trump, Biden, whatever, I haven't paid attention. I think there are still a substantial number of people who were like, I don't know, I don't really like either of them that much.
Yeah. And I absolutely disagree.
I totally disagree. Go ahead.
Absolutely disagree. Sorry about that, Mr. Donner.
You're welcome to disagree.
I absolutely disagree, because those people who aren't paying attention and haven't thought about it probably aren't going to vote anyhow. They are disenfranchised. They have their own problems that are more surmountable than, hopefully looking down the road 4 years or 2 years or 8 years. And honestly, I am in the middle of not the urban bubble. If you're East Coast, as you are, Mr. Donner, if you're the West Coast, if you're in a large urban environment, yeah, you might be, worried about the riots. But if you're in the silent majority land, you're not. You've made up your mind and you are running with it. We just do not have, I live in the middle of the heartland. We just do not have those same priorities. We don't have those same concerns. We just don't. We're rolling with it, and we're decided, and we're ready to move.
I completely agree with you. And let me just say one thing. I was going to hold this for the next segment, but everybody's jumping around, so I'll give it. The Trafalgar Group was the polling operation that got it right last time. The head of the Trafalgar Group was a guy by the name of Robert Cahaly. And I listened to a long podcast, which I'm not a big fan of, but I listened to it anyway. And he made the point that he believes, based on, and they don't believe in national polls. They just do statewide polls, one statewide poll after another. And they're very different than most pollsters. Very, very impressive operation. Anyway, he said he believes there's between 1 and 1.5% of people that have not made up their mind who to vote for. Just saying. Go ahead, Joe. You haven't had a chance to get in here, and we got 2 minutes. Go.
Oh, it's an interesting conversation, and it sounds, and I guess I tend to agree more with Sarah and you. And what I think it boils down to is this is a base election. You've got red side, blue side, who you're going out for. I think that favors Trump. He's wildly popular with Republicans. Over 90% of the grassroots Republicans support him. His people are going to turn out. If you look at Biden, the blue base, they all hate Trump, but a lot of them do not like him. Progressive, the Bernie bros, who he goes back and forth trying to court them and then alienating them. He did it again tonight. He said, hey, I beat all those people, remember? He did that again tonight. You don't have these guys wrapped up. So if it's a base election, Trump's getting his people out. Biden has not given blue voters a reason to go out and support him. Is Trump hatred enough to get 65 million Americans to go out to the polls and vote against Donald Trump? I don't think it is. I think Joe Biden has to offer people a reason to vote for him. And a lot of blue voters will rally for that anti-Trump thing, but a significant number won't. And that could be enough to cost him the election right there.
I couldn't agree with you more. That was such a really good point. I saw a graphic today put out by Statista.com. I love that website. If you get a chance, hit that website. Anyway, they went back to 1988 and generally about, a little bit up, a little bit down, but 60% or so of the people polled after debate say, the debate was helpful. I need to reset. say that the debate was helpful to them. But the survey found that only 10% of the people who watched it made their decision about who to vote for. And I think this time that's going to be much lower. But more often than not, I think it seems to me that people dial in to root for their candidate, cross their fingers, hope the opponent will make a mistake. I think that's more, more like betting on a horse and seeing if he's going to come in first. I also think there's a lot out there of myths around debates, like JFK looked tanned and rested and Nixon old and sweaty. But, I looked at the 1960 debate. It was in black and white. I'm not really sure how a tan shows up in black and white. Somebody help me there.
No, that's true.
Okay, wait. Before you get on to that other point, we're just about to wrap things up. But first, a lot of things were discussed in the final debate, and it would seem rather difficult to believe that there are many undecided people left in America. And that's just what we're talking about. So how do you see after today, what is going to be the deciding factor? If it's not going to be the debate, is it going to be the Hunter Biden emails, Tim? Is it going to be the turnout, like Joe says? Is it going to be people afraid of the long, dark winter ahead? Where do you see it?
Well, thanks for presenting a false choice between the four top issues, which everybody cares about. But the point is that all of these issues are important, but I think Trump basically wins on his record, because when you strip away the personality, the record is pretty indisputably exactly what he promised when he won in 2016. And yet, at the same time, I've written for a long time that it may not even in the end be about Trump because of the incapacity of whatever Democratic candidate comes up, either ideologically or in Joe Biden's case, a frail appearance. I think this debate was far more important than the first one because, first of all, I think people wanted to see the president out there in a national forum appearing healthy. Remember, this man, the president, had COVID 2 weeks ago, and we all thought, well, that could be the end of it all. I mean, Biden's going to win, and look how strong he looked tonight. I think that by itself meant a lot. And I think the contrast between the energetic, dynamic Trump and the feeble, aging Joe Biden was quite sharp.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't help thinking that there's maybe a lot of people in the country today, when they're thinking about who they want in the White House for the next 4 years. And now this doesn't apply, going back to what Sarah said earlier on about being in the heartland, the folks in the heartland there in the rural areas, in the Midwest and so on, the upper Midwest, they haven't been really badly affected by all of the civil unrest, the riots, the burning, the looting, all of that kind of stuff. But a lot of people in the urban areas on the East Coast, and the West Coast, they've been much more, the two things that have been close to home for them have been, of course, the virus, and then, of course, the looting and the burning and the riots and all of that kind of stuff. And I can't help thinking that, when people go to vote in a general election, they're voting for, well, do we need to change the next 4 years from what the previous 4 years have been like? Now, in this case, they're looking at the virus and the riots, and they're saying, well, neither one of these candidates can actually just simply snap their fingers and put a stop to both of those things. So, they've got to look to, okay, what was happening before the violence and the riots? Things were actually pretty good. I think it's hard for anyone to dispute that. And I think that ultimately might be the deciding factor, that people are fatigued with the violence and the riots, but they do remember, they still have a glimpse of how good life was before then. And I think I personally think that is ultimately what's going to tip it for Donald Trump, because they know that, well, it's not like we can just vote Biden into office and he's going to snap his fingers and everything's going to be wonderful again. He can't do that. Neither of these men can do that. So, that to me, I think is a big factor.
Sarah, you've been in politics a long time, been a speechwriter for some pretty big names. Well, how do you think this all falls down when it's all said and done, and the fat lady has sung?
Oh, well, I don't make any bones about it. I think Trump is going to win, and I think Trump's going to win by a lot. I don't think it's going to be a squeaker. I think that he has proven himself. He's an attractive candidate for a lot of people because he's not a politician. And, you know, he keeps saying, I've been in for 47 months. What have you done for 47 years? And it resonates. And it resonates with, you know, the people in between the New York cities and the LAs. And, you know, I just don't see him losing this. I see him winning. I see him winning by a good margin. What I don't see is the Democrats giving up at all or conceding. I think we're going to have this go on for days, perhaps weeks, when it comes down to it, from just, hey, just don't concede. You know, we'll figure out a way to do an end run. And I think that's what's going to happen. I do believe, though, when it's all said and done, Trump is going to win the whole kit and caboodle.
Tim, what about you? Final thoughts?
Well, I predicted in July of 2019 that Donald Trump would win 350 electoral votes. And I didn't come off of that for a long time, including during the COVID. I think I probably tamped down that prediction somewhat. But I see him at this point winning by about the same margin that he did in 2016. I think he wins pretty much all of the states that he won last time. He might lose one, might pick up another one that he lost last time, like New Hampshire. But I see him cresting 300 and moving towards the vicinity of 310, 315 electoral votes. But I see him being reelected, if only because I can't really conceive of people, when it comes right down to it, picking Joe Biden to be the leader of the free world. I just don't see it.
Joe.
Yeah, you know, it goes back to me. I thought we found out very early, the first Democratic primary debate in Miami in June, that this was an incredibly weak field of candidates. They settled on this guy because they couldn't find anybody better. No one on the Democratic side has been enthused about this guy. He's run a non-campaign campaign, which has just been historically unique, hiding from the American people. The coronavirus has been a good excuse for that. But I mean, deliberately not telling them what he stands for. And I just don't see how you can win that way. You can't win that way. They're staking everything on their own created notion that this vast majority of American people agree with them, that Donald Trump is beyond the pale. And he is not beyond the pale. In the minds of tens of millions of Americans, he is exactly what they want, a change agent. And they have this guy not campaigning, and he's basically representing the status quo before Trump, who was this big change agent, and the American people want change. I don't see how you're going to say, yeah, just go ahead and vote for me anyway. I'll bring back things the way they were. That's not going to whip people up to get them out and vote for this guy. And so I think this debate, Biden needed to win. And I don't think he lost, but I think he needed to win, and he didn't do that.
All right, two quick things. I think we should watch for some serious hanky-panky election hanky-panky in Pennsylvania. You heard it here first, folks. I see that as a possible election fraud problem. Also, I Joe Biden kept making the point that people care about their families. They don't care about Biden's family. But I really do think Americans care about whether they're the people they've elected are honest, whether they have integrity, whether they are grifters, whether they're trying to influence, peddle. And I think that really they have a set of morality, and they don't like to elect people that do stuff like that. So that's my 2 cents. Anyway, thank you, Graham, Sarah, Tim, and Joe. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Thank you for joining us on this special edition of the Conservative 5. Please check out our other programs on your favorite video platform. Thanks for tuning in, and remember to surf on over to LibertyNation.com, the sponsor of tonight's program. Subscribe to our popular conservative news daily briefing and visit our new Roku channel and our new Rumble page. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, and have a good day. And remember, liberty all the time and everywhere.
Extra, read all about it.
Election 2020 Big Bottom Flash Reports are coming. On election night, at the bottom of every hour, LibertyNation.com will give you Election Night 2020, 90 seconds at a time, with our Big Bottom Flash Reports. You'll get the drop with our one-stop shop. We'll shed the light on fight night. Tune into LibertyNation.com on election night for our Big Bottom Flash Reports at the bottom of every hour. 90 glorious seconds for everything you need to know without the spin.